Why do you ask my name, seeing it is incomprehensible? Judges 13:8. Yeah, God said that. Famous last words. The idea is, very famous. We'd like to think our last words will outlive us. Not knowing when we will die, we like to highlight times in real life that it seemed like someone had enough control and power over death to get a good line in. Media, in many ways, is a fight against this lack of control because notably we get to decide when characters end and what they say and what to end the book with. The last page of Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves begins with the word Yggdrasil, sacred tree, stretching all the words in Norse cosmology. We're not gonna talk about this. We're not. What we will be talking about is this channel's patron saint and certified cutie, Paul Newman. Oh, and all the other people in Cool Hand Luke. The last italicized words in House of Leaves before the index. The quote it pulls from the movie is, sometimes nothing's a pretty cool hand to play. This ending made me think a bit differently about both works, so I'm going to look at Cool Hand Luke, what it says about asceticism, and try to apply that back into House of Leaves. So many point to Luke as being some sort of Christ figure. No, what? Really? Him being this story's Christ, what is he like, and what does this tell us about what an ascetic is supposed to be? He tries to inspire those around him through very eggy acts of hubris. He's non-resistant to punishment, but ultimately defiant. I've seen people read his character as a believer and as an atheist because he does waffle. I've also seen people empathize with the prison and not with Luke, because he rejects God at the end. We will look at if this is really true, but my God, how could anyone empathize with the prison? Yeah, like in real life. But in this movie, Luke's crime is a mere trifle, taking off parking meter heads. Maybe he just doesn't think people who own something should be able to charge exorbitant amounts for it. In many ways, I wish this movie just came right out and said it. He's an anarchist. Even if I wish it was, I don't think that was the point exactly. At any rate, this movie does not ask us to empathize with some serial murderer. The prison's guards put Luke in solitary, a horrible practice with no benefit that should not exist at all, because his mom dies. They make him dig a hole for no reason, fill it back in, and dig it back out. After this, they beat him until he begs not to be hit, and they make him the right-hand man to disgrace him among the other prisoners. Like, what? They're not the good guys. I don't care how much you love licking boot. Asceticism in this film is making something out of nothing. Luke is sustained on little speech, little food, and little energy. So this brings us back to House of Leaves, a book that cannot be summed up, like really, not without losing a fair amount of resolution. But quick and dirty, we have 5 layers of narrative. 1, the Navidson Record, a film that doesn't exist. 2, Zampano, our blind film critic. 3, Johnny Truant, who allegedly found Zampano's manuscripts. 4, the unknown editors. 5, respondents to the story on page 263 and 151. 5.1, Will Navidson reads a book by the light caused by burning its pages, and this book is called House of Leaves. And then 5.2, the online community around this book. So a lot of people discuss this book online, the criticism being done around this book. It just sort of adds another layer of narrative. So what's it about? A house which contains an infinite hallway and the exploration of it on layer 1. But as a whole, I'd say it's about literary history. In this way, it's a lot like James Joyce's Ulysses. It relies heavily on what it references, There are many parts of this book that are challenging, but it's more readable. I mean, this one tells you what its references are from, although it sometimes lies and not all the references are real. And there's a lot more winking at the camera than with Ulysses. Sometimes with Ulysses, you're just like, damn, Mr. Aloysius, nice palindrome, but what the fuck's going on with this dog? This self-awareness makes House of Leaves' pretensions bearable. So one of the things House of Leaves references a lot is the Bible, arguably the start of the Western canon. Danielewski notes the influence of the Talmud on the book. At a few points in this book, the house is thought of as a deity. Reading the house as God, God is something we cannot understand in the same way Moses cannot see the face of God, or how Yahweh was never to be spoken in Judaism. Navidson, Zampano, and Johnny are all destroyed by their attempts to understand this house. This house is both infinite and empty, both absolute void and something incomprehensibly large. Both set off a similar response in the brain: fear. With the understanding that much of literature's beginnings were in trying to understand God, we can see the history of literature as that. There's a theme in House of Leaves that words are meant to protect us, but yet they are the great killer of the story. In the real world, words do save us. They do this by streamlining all possibilities into what's relevant. For example, the word stop at a stop sign pairs down all possible things you could do at an intersection and states clearly what is important. Here, there are many possibilities, but they divide neatly down into one word: stop. Often you'll have a few possibilities, but God being infinite, divided by all the words in your language, and you'll still have an infinity. So here we are at the futility of words. I'd say futility is when purpose equals 0. On this math tip, 1 divided by infinity is 0. A fictional version of Douglas Hofstadter says in the book that this can be applied to artistic influence. So a plagiarist is one of one, wholly the other artist. One artist and 50% the other. So infinite influences is pure originality. A text influenced by innumerable things, like, I don't know, House of Leaves, gives the reader the strange feeling that the text is built off of something that they can't place. In House of Leaves, this is literally true. The film, making up much of the story, is actually not real. You can't place it. The book is full of false references, and some of the references that our narrator, Johnny, claims are fake are in fact real. Johnny points out that Zampano often cites secondary sources as a way to appear that he knows more about primary sources. Secondary sources may cite many primary ones, so in one reference they contain many. This book sort of seems to claim that the attempt at understanding is futile, but I think it also shows that it's spectacular, which makes these attempts worth reading and inspires others to write. Johnny's inciting incident, what makes him write, is finding Zampano's work. The failure of literature is expressed through the destruction of Johnny, Zampano, and Navidson. Literature destroys itself while it's being built. Both Johnny and Zampano go crazy while they're writing, and this is expressed literally through the gaps in the book. Throughout the book, at one point, Johnny says that Zampano had burned holes in the book. There's a bunch of crossouts, and from there, we run into these bigger formatting changes. These gaps are what draw people into a work. These crossouts that Zampano made add to the authenticity of the work as a found document. on page 21, Johnny claims to be a sucker for abandoned things. So if this didn't have authenticity as a found document, it wouldn't be the same thing to Johnny. It wouldn't bring him in as much. The editors claim not to know whether Zampano or Johnny make the formatting changes in the book. The crossouts, these gaps, the things that would get edited out in a very polished publishing process are what add to the spectacle of this work. In Johnny's destruction, I think it's interesting that he gives up drinking, drugs, and sex. He is forced to do this by the book, which occupies so much of his mind he can't afford any messing around or any relationships. This signals that he is sort of a martyr figure like Leopold Bloom, who doesn't drink, and like Luke. The way of the aesthetic is making something out of nothing. So, in the case of Johnny and Leopold Bloom, no drinking, more writing, right? And the large passages of nothing are representative of this. Luke does this with his energy, even though he drinks. So back to Cool Hand Luke. I think that Luke's faith is genuine, despite its wavering. The question I would like to pose is whether or not God exists in this film. I've seen people say that Luke's final line, what we have here is a failure to communicate, is his, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" I'd have to agree, and man, what a line. I like how he's talking to both the prison guards and God, but is God there? I think in the Bible, the tragedy of the crucifixion, a representation of all the world's injustice, is set off by what it represents to Christians. Christians can view this in a positive light because it means personal salvation. And the reason they are able to do this is because of the words in the Bible that set this up with prophecy. And it wasn't for the fulfillment of this prophecy, then wouldn't it just be sick and tragic? What about all the non-gods killed or imprisoned for virtuous or at least dumb reasons? In the Bible, I feel that the hand of God is visible in the crucifixion, especially in John, but in Cool Hand Luke, there's no justice, no silver lining of fulfilled prophecy. What if the words in the Bible were made to protect those reading and writing it? What if martyrdom really is futile, talking at a big, unfathomable nothing, and that your death is not a win, it's a loss because you won't be able to further your cause anymore. In the movie, I think we can read Dragline's preaching of Luke's gospel after his death as a consolation in words for what happened in action. Navidson's Zampano, in Johnny's words, could be viewed similarly, consolating in words what they can't understand in experience. Consolation for the void present in trying to understand God. So, what can we do with that? All this uselessness is useless and kind of dumb. I just think it's knowing that narrative exists as protection and that there's a great deal that can't be understood. Our failure to communicate complicates problems that may actually be simple in experience. Oh hey, what's up? It's me, off script and outside. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed making it. Yeah, hit that big ol' fat red. This essay isn't anything new. It's kind of all in the book. Like, I think there's none of this that old Mark Z Cool Hand Lukesky wouldn't be aware of. So, if nothing else, this is my endorsement. Another white boy who likes House of Leaves. How shocking. Anyway, thanks again for watching. It means a lot. Bye.